All right, good people around the table, ladies and gents. I think it's about high time that we started. It is mark 11 o'clock in the morning right now, within our GMT time with respect to the start. Welcome to all of you attendees. I think a warm welcome to also our delegates, planners, and esteemed experts around the table. We're glad to have everyone around here for this 1-hour webinar. It's going to be short, but it's intended to be insightful and extremely informative. That being said, seeing as how we do have 1 hour, it would be prudent of us to jump straight into the crux of the matter. So allow me to start with introductions. The first thing that I would like to put on the table for you esteemed ladies and gents and everything in between is the topic. Today, we're talking about something really amazing, a hybrid of more than one industry area, empowering Africa industries, AI's crucial role in fraud detection and data management solutions. That in itself is quite packed, ladies and gents. And what I like about this particular forum is that we are taking expertise from individualized specialism areas and we're bringing them together. AI in itself, fraud detection in itself, data in itself. This is going to be quite an exciting exchange. Moving into segueing the purpose and objective of this entire exchange, our objective is to make sure that all of you leave this forum, this webinar, more informed about AI, fraud management, and the data-driven solutions that speak to the mitigation of risk. Remember, guys, around the table, that's what we are here for. The management, the identification, the understanding, and the leveraging of intelligence in order to ensure that we are better experts, that we're more cognitive of our environment, using AI as a tool to reach that next level of cognition. All right, I'm going to do a round robin of introductions before we move into the material, good people. But with respect to a round robin of introductions, can I just make sure that with the attendees around the table currently, you guys are receiving us, that you guys are fully aware and by all means not artificially intelligent? Can you give me a thumbs up, attendees, presenters? Great, I saw some hands up. I will assume that is a thumbs up because the AI might have not translated properly. Be that as it may, good people, let me just say that whilst the round robin is happening, I am going to share a quick sort of slide deck for you guys to look at, and then we will go around the table with respect to the introduction. The intention of what is going to be shared herein is merely to make sure that there is a high level of engagement. I'll quickly do this. All right, good people. Please give me a thumbs up if you are seeing what is on the screen right now. In the sense of menti.com. So ladies and gents, this is going to be the introduction session. For the next 5 will be a round robin. Whilst we are round robining, you would see that there's a screen up on your viewing deck right now. And this screen merely asks you, presenters, you are also welcome. As an audience member, go to menti.com and type in that code. And you will be presented with those 5 options. As you are engaging, it will be a live update that you will see on your screen with respect to the delegates around the table. I see that one person uses AI regularly right now. So whilst this is happening in the background, I am going to move into a very brief introduction on my side and then round robin to our esteemed experts. Ladies and gents, on my side, my name is Dr. Nishal Kushal. I have a PhD in the field of digital science, data, and technology from Newport, Utah, United States. Candidate professor of technology, architecture expert in Azure, AWS, and Google Cloud. 2.5 decades of leadership experience, ran a computer forensics firm for one of the big four auditing outfits within the globe. The division with respect to engagement was between United Kingdom, United States, and South Africa. It was based in Pretoria in the early 2000s. So yes, I'm over 225 years old. Been recognized in court as a subject matter expert within data and technology, published academia and lectured at various universities. Currently on the board, as well as taking up leadership as CIO, CEO, and CTO on various multinationals about AI, machine learning, risk technology, biotechnology and neurotechnology, augmented virtual reality, and authentication technology. But that is just setting a tone for the rest of the esteemed experts around the table. You have a very exciting panel brought together today. I'm going to round robin so far as our presenters are concerned. Over to you. Let me start with Peter, although there are two Peters, so it's up to you to decide which Peter.
I'll go first because I think I'm first in the order of presenting. So welcome, everyone. My name is Peter Reed. I run the Vision AI business at Mint. So we're a business that creates exclusively software subscription products based on computer vision. So we work in the field of AI that takes visual feeds like camera feeds, images, etc., and pulls them in and makes decisions based on them. And we are an AI first, SaaS first company. It's great to be speaking here with you.
Thanks, Peter. Yeah, I'm Peter Gardner, head of data at Mint. My role is really to solve data and analytical problems and help to provide deeper, more valuable insights to my clients. I have a background in commercial management across a few different industries, and it's that experience that I use to really understand how data can help to move business forward.
Thanks, Peter and Peter. I'm Edward Miller, pre-sale solution architect at Mint. So I've been working on cloud-based solutions for quite some time. Was a solution architect previously and software developer. And I've been working on data and AI solutions for quite some time now. Recently, my focus has been on generative AI and specifically the Azure OpenAI service.
Wonderful, good people. Esteemed colleagues, audience members, I think that right now, on the basis of you understanding what experts you have around the table, there is a marked appreciation for where this is going to go into. Now that the intros are done, quick ground rules. You are welcome to place questions and answers in chat. There is going to be a format in the sense that there will be 3 presentations. After the presentations, we will select a few questions to pose to the individual narration. Those individual questions might not cover all of the questions if we do have a flood of input and Q&As coming. At the end, we will do a catch-all with respect to Q&A. That would be the first ground rule. Second is have fun and interact, people. This is an open forum. It needs to be engaging. We'll try to keep to our 1 hour, depending on the questions that we're going to segue into. The recording of the presentation, be it via Teams or otherwise external software, can only be done by presenters and organizers. If you wish for a recording, I would suggest drop a request to the presenter, the organizers, and I'm sure that that will be facilitated. So without further ado, ladies and gents, I want to conclude by saying that it would seem that the spread of AI competence in the audience and presenter members, it's particularly appreciable. No one is yet an AI hybrid between natural and computerized, so I'm glad to hear that. Let's move on to the first presentation without further ado. Over to you, Peter. Thank you, audience. I'm going to stop sharing and handing it over right now.
Sounds great, thank you. Let me get my screen ready and we can kick off. Can I just get an indication of whether you can see that before I start? Fantastic. Okay, so thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm going to be talking about AI in fraud prevention, fraud detection and fraud prevention, and I'm going to be focusing quite a bit on the AI-human combination, not really technically, but more from a sort of a philosophical standpoint. Give a couple of examples of how we see fraud, and then maybe just a bit of a call to action in terms of tackling fraud in the technology industry specifically, as well as AI. So what are we going to be talking about? We live in a world of AI, and we need to be focusing on harnessing AI for the advancement of processes, technology, industries, etc., not its misuse. So whenever any powerful technology comes along, it always changes humanity for the better and is always used by the bad actors for misuse. And we need to focus on that. One of the themes that I'm going to be speaking through in the next 15 minutes has got to do with the human-AI collaboration. It's really quite a powerful thing. But this is one of my favorite quotes that I saw on now called X a little while ago, because I get asked constantly about AI and jobs. And this is, for me, the most accurate way of positioning both what happens in the AI world and jobs, and how I tend to look at things like fraud, combating fraud, etc. So an AI won't take your job, but a person using AI will. We see this time and time again. My chief technical architect is in charge of hiring my product development team, and he now only looks at developers that use AI in their day-to-day jobs. If you ask an AI to write code, its first iteration is pretty bad. But if you work with it, it gets better and better. And it can take away that boilerplate code that takes 3-4 hours to write, versus an AI, a normal person who would write that without AI and take those 3-4 hours of actual time. So efficiency is a hell of a lot easier. So we'll look at why AI and a person using AI is going to be well positioned in the fraud industry. So why do we talk about AI and fraud? AI can make fraud easier. Again, it's not dissimilar to a bunch of new technology that's come out in the last while. We looked at all the way back from the 70s and 80s computers, making fraud easier to perpetrate. And in fact, we can go even further back. So AI, how does it make fraud easier? Well, there's the flashy examples like generating faces for face recognition, etc. But I've got an example here that was the subject of quite an intense study in the US. Now, this is an Amazon review, and this review was created by an AI. The reason I've decided to highlight this review is that Amazon reviews of products, restaurants, etc., have a direct financial impact on the product, on the service, etc. So when you search Amazon, you get recommendations of products and services that have the best reviews. If you could write a bot that went out and created the best reviews from thousands of people that are all seemingly different, your product is boosted to the top. It's a very classic example of fraud. What was scary about this example is that the professor studying it eventually proved, mathematically, I'd like to say, it was more linguistically, that it is impossible to pick up or to definitively prove when one was created by an AI and not. So we've got the good guys using AI. They ran this over an AI to see if we could pick up if it was generated. We've got the bad guys using AI. We call this a Red Queen arms race. It's named after in Alice in Wonderland. The Red Queen had to continuously run on the treadmill to stand still. And a Red Queen race is typical of advancements in any form of technology. Nuclear weapons come out. Bad guys want to create bombs. The good guys want to create medical resonance imaging technology to help. And so you have this kind of stepwise creation. Cybersecurity is no different. Traditional, I'm going to call it cybersecurity. Whenever the new tools come out that help us to combat cybersecurity, the bad actors are going to use those new tools to carry on. And what's critical here is that we have a focus on humans and AI working together, and always a strong focus on using and developing the tools to be able to help pick up fraud. So the real question for me is, how can humans work better with AI to combat fraud in general, advanced AI fraud in particular, and to be the good guys, to be coming up with ways to prevent fraud coming in, specifically fraud that uses artificial intelligence, like the Amazon example that I pointed out there. We're going to look at a couple of examples in a bit, but I wanted to dive into this human AI combination because there are a lot of applications of AI. In cybersecurity, AI is making decisions faster and quicker on zero-day exploits than we could ever do as humans. However, we see the best strengths coming in when humans and AIs work together. And why is that? Because AI has strengths that humans don't. So we work in the field of computer vision, and we work with customers who have cameras, and they sit and watch those cameras. One of the first examples of superhuman AI was MRI scans. They can pick up tumors in scans at a better rate than radiographers could. But they couldn't do that at 9 o'clock on a Monday morning when the radiographer had just come in and was rested and had coffee. They could do it at Thursday afternoon when he'd been working for a week and had seen 120 scans every day. AIs don't tire. They are relentlessly consistent in what they apply, and they can work through massive amounts of data sets without getting fatigued. Humans typically make a mistake when they review large data sets or images of about 4%. AI in some fields is getting to 3 to 2%, but that 3 to 2% is consistent and not fluctuating whether we've had 6 cups of coffee or not. Humans, on the other hand, have a lot of strengths that AIs don't. Humans have intuition. Intuition is just a very complicated algorithm we apply in our brain to understand complex patterns. We have ethics. It's really important that decisions that are made by AIs get made in combination with humans that apply ethical boundaries to them. We have social context. Making a decision with just the data set in front of you doesn't ask the question, but what if? If you have an AI draw up a legal letter, it may be a perfect response to that legal problem, but it doesn't ask the question, what if this becomes law and then sets precedent? How does that affect other countries, other industries, other people? So you need the humans to come in with the understanding of ethical, social, legal implications, also a little bit more of an understanding of the world. The bad actors in fraud perpetration are constantly weaving and changing, and they do that in the physical world in a way that humans do with creativity. So we need to be able to combine the two. So we work in a world where AI is used to pick up whether there's a problem. It is relentlessly consistent at that. It is very good at saying something's not quite right here. And then we work in a world where humans come in and say, let us apply a little bit of thinking and context. I'm going to give an example in a little bit of a customer that had fraud occurring on their site. I'll show you screenshots of one example of how we caught that. When we analyzed this problem for them, we started by watching a 2-hour section of video of their flaw. That took us 2 hours to watch. You have to watch it in real time, and we missed everything. Then we asked the AI to just take snapshots of interesting points. The AI took 20 snapshots. Now, it takes 2 hours to review 2 hours of footage, but it takes less than 20 minutes to review 20 images. And that's if you stare at each image for a minute, which is an incredibly long time to do so, and pick up a hell of a lot of different use cases there. So if we view AI and humans as collaborators to try and push this narrative of there are bad guys and the good guys need to constantly be focusing on working on getting better, then it's really critical that we understand the world of fraud, we understand how to work with AIs, we understand how we can push that. When you put AIs in a place where they have to pick up things like fraud and make decisions, you get some good results, but you get mediocre results. Humans, on the other hand, we've been doing it for a very long time, but the bad guys are also trying. When you combine them, I think it gives us a great edge to be able to step up. And then there's one thing that we find really interesting when we work in the world of AI and fraud, and that is that when we talk about AI, we tend to think the big flashy examples, ChatGPT, understanding MRI scans, etc. But most of the benefit of working with AI, especially in fields like fraud, is one level lower. We work with a lot of customers in the finance industry, in banks and insurance, etc. And yes, a small percentage of them want to use something like Bing or ChatGPT to enhance, pick up fraud, enhance their business. Most of them are on the level of let's extract things from forms. Let's do a little bit of basic face recognition. Those things that are seen as the sort of more mundane examples of AI, but actually the more impactful and the more powerful, freeing up the humans to apply their ethical and social and intuitive view on the world. So I've spoken about the Amazon example of fraud in AI, and how it's being used to perpetrate more fraud. But obviously we come from a developing nation, and while we do, nobody is going to discount the fact that we have incredible AI skills and technology in South Africa and Africa more broadly, parts of APAC, etc. We also have a very large population base that is ready to perpetrate fraud in a more physical or more guttural kind of level. So how can we take AI and apply it to cases of fraud like I've highlighted, very sophisticated, advanced fraud like the Amazon example, but how can we also apply it to the less sophisticated but far more pervasive types of fraud that we see in our day-to-day lives? One of the I'm going to use two examples now coming up, and both of them are around the fact that AI often can see things that humans can't. Now, I need to clarify that a little bit. It sees what we see and it can make decisions that we can make, but it does it quicker and over a far bigger base. So I'm going to show two examples of fraud that we have used AI to help combat in two separate customers. And in both of these customers, a human could do this job, but a human can't review 100,000 applications a month or 100,000 hours of footage a month, and an AI can. And this is where the combination comes in. So this is an example. We have technology that compares faces. You can see that this gentleman applied for a product, and we compare the face from an identity document or home affairs to the live face. It's quite clear that the gentleman on the left there is an elderly male gentleman. The gentleman on the right is a very young male. Our technology matched them up at about a 10% rate. Now, this is not new technology, but this is helping this particular customer who does 20 to 30 applications a month to pick up fraud a little bit easier. What happened in this case? The AI said, only 10% match, and put up its hand and said, hey, human, I think you need to have a look at this. The human had a look and said, well, this is clearly fraud. Everything that would have been possible before by a human, but at a far faster scale and at far less fatigue-inducing activities, let's call it, for the humans. One more example in the computer vision space. This is one I talked about. We took 2 hours of video footage. This is a particular customer who manufactures bread, and they find that when they manufacture 200,000 loaves of bread a day and they dispatch them, at the end of the day, they've only sent 180,000 loaves of bread out, but they don't have 20,000 left. They've got 10,000 left. So the bread's walking out the door one way or another. We watched 2 hours of footage. We couldn't see any problems. When we scrutinized 20 snapshots of the same 2 hours of footage of the same incidents, my team was able to pick up a problem. And you'll see on the far right, the pallets of bread are stacked 11 high. And that image with the red bread, the back pallet is stacked 11 high, and the front pallet is stacked 11 high, but the middle one is only stacked 10 high. This is something that us, including the customer, all missed when we watched video footage, but all of us got when we reduced that footage down to 20 snapshots. Could we have done that as humans? Potentially, but there are 1,600 hours of footage every day generated at this factory. Virtually impossible for a human to review. All the AI did was take a look at everything that was happening and go, that's interesting, that's interesting. Show it to a human, human made the decision. So fantastic example of human AI combinations of how we can work together. And really the point of applying this is to say, we are in a Red Queen race. And since the advent of technology 100 years ago, we have been and always will be in a Red Queen race. How can we go, let's not ban AI, let's not block AI, but how can we embrace it, work together with it to be able to help combat fraud? And as I said, there's the very flashy examples like the Amazon ones and ChatGPT, but mostly we find opportunities to use this kind of tech in a more what we would think of as mundane or more kind of day-to-day level. But it is, if properly applied, an incredibly powerful technology. And we need to embrace it instead of resist it. So really, we need to be thinking, how can we use AI? We need to be thinking AI is a partner, and how can we use it to attack this Red Queen syndrome that we have and will have and are going to have with any new iterations of technology coming out. And before I close off there and just open up to any questions or comments, I've mentioned this idea that in combating AI fraud, humans and AI have to work together. This particular talk that I've just given, the deck, including all of the text, the wording, the content, as well as all of the images, was generated by AI. Now, it typically takes me 3 to 6 hours to put something like this together. In working with an AI, the first iteration was not great. But 7 or 8 iterations later, I had something that reflected my thoughts that took me 1 to 3 hours to put together. So chopping it down in half, and I had something that real context. And I think in the context of, let's see in each of our businesses, in each of our areas, in each of our industries, instead of blocking and banning and pushing away AI, how we can work together with it. And I strongly believe it will make us more efficient, make us more productive, combat fraud better, and make us more human, because we're spending more time on our ethical side and our creative side instead of the mundane rote side. So that's just the highlights of what we see in the industry, how we approach fraud and AI. Where I see the main key points are, which is let's embrace it, let's work together, and we have to actively focus on that Red Queen race in order to keep up with and beat the bad guys. And with that, I would like to ask if there's any questions anybody has. Nishal, would we like to have questions after each section, or should we hold it to the end?
Thank you, Peter. I think there is an opportunity for all of the delegates around the table to ask questions in the Q&A sections. So people around the table, please do so. What I will allow for is a singular question of introspection just to conclude. And at the end, we can have a catch-all with respect to the remaining questions. But I see that currently there is no questions posed on the Q&A side. I am going to open it just for the next few seconds. And if we do not get a question, I'm going to segue into an individual question to yourself, Peter, and then we can move on to our rest of the presentations, keeping in mind that it is 11:27, so we're also cognitive of time. All right, the few seconds have been given on the Q&A side. I want to highlight something, and I want to pull an introspection out of what you've said for the rest of the delegates, Peter. You've mentioned ethical lean, quite intriguing, because that could be a mitigating factor with respect to the creative implementation of AI solutions and the shaping of AI in an effective form. But are there any biases within AI models currently for fraud detection? And in summary, how would you just mitigate them in your solution sets?
Yeah, it's a great question. AI always has biases, and that's because AI is trained by the history of the world and humans, both of which have very significant biases. The only real answer I can give to that is it's just a constant focus, Michelle. Every time we create, train, and work with an AI, we need to constantly be questioning ourselves and our own biases. That's really the only way to do it. Luckily, AI has come to the fore and really crescendoed, I would call it, in the world at about the same time that privacy is coming to the fore and becoming a real focus point. So those two coincide. It's great. Sometimes it makes AI creators' jobs much harder, but that's a good thing. All it needs is a constant vigilant focus on it, instead of look at this great thing I've created, it's look at this great thing I've created, and I've created it with ethics in mind. There are examples in various fields of AI, but generally that's what I would say.
Thank you, Peter. I think let's move on to the next presentation. There are a few questions which are being populated in the machine chat, in the meeting chat, hopefully not through machine learning. But moving on to Peter, Mr. Gardner, over to you. And I think what we will do is we will also take a singular question as the questions roll out to conceptualize and end with the remaining at the end of the entire presentation. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Michelle. Just a quick check through thumbs up. Can everyone see the presentation, Solving Fraud Through ML? Perfect, perfect. All right, so now that Peter's taken us through how AI can work together with humans to solve fraud, we're going to turn our attention to another form of computer intelligence, machine learning, and how we can use that to redefine fraud analytics. So historically, identifying potential fraud involved creating universal rules for what was considered normal behavior, and then looking for any behavior that deviated from those rules. This approach works best if all customers or all people within that group behave the same way, but we know that's not the case. Even within very homogeneous groups, people behave very differently. This approach has been effective in the past, but it does lead to false positive results, where behavior that may be totally normal for a certain individual is flagged as potentially fraudulent because it broke one of these universal rules. So machine learning within fraud analytics really becomes about understanding the individual and understanding individual behavior. New data sources, coupled with the ability to query and process large volumes of data in near real time, have enabled us to generate deeper insights into individual customers. When reviewing potentially fraudulent behavior, we train machine learning models to review all previous behaviors observed for that specific customer before deciding whether their current behavior is unusual enough to warrant closer inspection. So, and these machine learning models now not only look at that customer's transaction history, but they can also look at these new sources of data that are becoming available, how that person navigated through the website or through the mobile app before making the transaction, whether they accessed the website or mobile app from an unusual device or an unusual network, whether that network or device has been involved in fraudulent activity in the past, even looking at social media. Someone may have reported that or posted about their wallet being stolen on social media. That's all in data that can now be incorporated into these models, where you're not only looking at transaction behavior, but you're looking at everything around it as well, to work out whether the behavior is actually out of character for that person or not. So obviously, we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, as you say. There's been a lot of what do you call it, refinement of fraud analytics over time, and it's quite a mature science at this point in time. So we don't want to throw away everything we've achieved up until now and focus purely on this ML approach. What we need to do is combine the two. It's obviously inefficient to compare every single incoming transaction to a customer's full transaction history before deciding whether to process the transaction or flag it as fraud. By leveraging the existing fraud rules, we can filter these transactions to feed only those where there may be potential fraud through the machine learning model. The key is obviously maintaining a balance, and the balance is between having fraud rules that are too restrictive, where you're creating false positives and customers are experiencing unnecessary delays on their transactions. And then on the other side, obviously, if the fraud rules are too loose, then potential fraud may not be passed through the machine learning model and you may miss it. So getting this balance right is a constant effort. But even the first iterations of ML solutions can yield significant results. American Express reported that when they first implemented machine learning fraud detection almost 10 years ago, they saw an immediate 30% improvement over the previous non-machine learning models. And that was 10 years ago. So while it is a constant effort and you're going to need to refine over time to really get it perfect, even the very first iteration can yield really, really positive results. Now it becomes about, how can you identify those areas within your business where you can start to leverage machine learning. One way to identify potential machine learning use cases within your organization is to look for those areas where a set of universal rules or logic is used to analyze a diverse set of actors or scenarios. So these can include internal processes, supplier and vendor behavior, as well as obviously customer behavior as well. Another way to identify potential ML use cases is to look for where insights can be improved by including additional data points that may not have been previously available. We've spoken about system logs for mobile apps and websites. Most internal business systems have system logs as well, where you can see how the users within your organization are using it. And then, of course, there's external sources, weather, news, traffic, etc., that you can use as well. I want to now take a look at a few other applications of machine learning and where these are being used to solve, very pertinent issues within organizations globally. So supply chain, we know over the past few years with COVID and with that ship turning sideways in the canal, there have been massive disruptions to supply chain. By using machine learning, you can improve various aspects of supply chain analytics and forecasting, particularly refining your ETA tracking. So instead of having a general rule to say, oh, it takes 35 minutes to get from point A to point B, you'd now be able to understand who is the driver who's driving the route, which vehicle are they using, and how has their historical performance been. And you can start to develop ETAs based on the specific driver, the specific vehicle, the specific mode of transport that's being used. You can also do live route optimization, where you're incorporating external sources such as weather and traffic and rerouting vehicles on the fly autonomously. And then, of course, classic is looking for misbehavior. So seeing where someone's deviated from a planned route, have there been unauthorized stops along the route, and also, some of the more basic things, speeding, harsh braking, etc., abuse of the assets as well. So these are some of the areas where you can use machine learning models to really refine your insights and really improve accuracy and optimization. In 2022, McKinsey conducted research with several major consumer packaged goods companies, which showed that autonomous supply chain planning can lead to 4% revenue increase, about a 20% decrease in stock on hand or capital tied up in inventory, and around a 10% decrease in supply chain costs. So very, very attractive outcomes for what is really building on analytical solutions that most supply chain organizations have in place already. Another great area to look at for machine learning cases is within manufacturing. You can obviously optimize shift plans, so you can look at optimizing and prioritizing orders based on expected margins, the significance of the customer who's placed the order, whether there are other similar orders that can be grouped together. So you can have these production plans being optimized in real time continuously. Obviously, there's also predictive maintenance, which is a massive theme. Now, historically, predictive maintenance, you would look at generally what is the average lifetime of a specific component within a machine, and monitoring some IoT sensors generally for vibrations or electricity consumption to try and see if something was going wrong and spot it before catastrophic failure. Now what you're able to do is take that down to a lower level and see not only the expected lifetime per part, but the expected lifetime per part in that specific machine based on what is being produced. So if a part, tends to last 12 months when producing item A for 12 hours a day, every single day, but it only lasts 6 months when producing item B, you can now take that into account and say, well, it's produced 4 months of item B and 4 months of item A, this part's about to go down. And then, of course, there's safety, which is health and safety is massive within any manufacturing facility, particularly large scale. You can use things like temperature scanning to spot unwell individuals or people with fever. You can link your machine learning models up to your production lines to automate shutdowns when something goes wrong. And you can also spot, potentially risky behaviors, someone who's walking too close to a dangerous machine, things like that. You can start to highlight as well. Deloitte showed through a survey that of their clients that machine learning is reducing unplanned downtime by between 15 and 30% within those clients, while also reducing maintenance costs by 30%. So your machines are up for longer and you're spending less maintaining them. These same companies that were surveyed also showed that they've increased production throughput by 20% while increasing production quality by 35%. In the old days, those used to be almost mutually exclusive. You could either increase your rate of production or increase your quality of production, and not both. But machine learning is enabling both improvements across both of those at the same time. Then, of course, customer engagement, where I think personalizing your customer engagement is also becoming quite a science, and a fairly mature science at this point. In the past, you would have to segment your customer base into groups and create life cycle blueprints for each segment, and then try and guide your customers across that. And maintaining each of those segments had an administrative burden. These days, with machine learning, with the ability to process large amounts of data very, very quickly, you're able to segment your base into far more segments, which means you've got smaller, more homogeneous customer groups, and you're able to better match a specific customer with one of the segments that they fit best into. Of course, you've got proactive communication, so you can use machine learning to identify and react to leading indicators of certain behaviors. So the big one within any customer base management is churn. So you can look for those behaviors that potentially are a leading indicator for churn. And when you see those behaviors, you can proactively engage with that customer, not wait for them to send you a cancellation request, but rather pop them a message straight away and say, we understand you are having difficulty with XYZ, how can we assist? And you can start to mitigate churn that way. And then, of course, through personalized messaging, I think Ed will show us a bit more or inform us a bit more about this. But you can use generative AI to customize messages to customers based on their own speech patterns and language. And you can obviously also use machine learning to have targeted offers for those customers, cross-sell and upsell offers for them as well. Harvard Business Review studies showed that personalization of customer engagement has yielded increases of between 6 and 10% to total annual revenue. per year. So, I mean, this is massive. Companies are, really working hard to eke out any efficiency within their business. If you can grow your top line revenue by 6 to 10%, that has a massive impact on the rest of the business, particularly where you've already optimized your costs and production as far as possible. Thank you. So that's a bit of a view on machine learning and a bit of a high level discussion around how you can apply it within your business. Like I say, I encourage you to look for those areas within your business where a single set of rules is being applied across a diverse set of actors or scenarios, and also those areas within your business where you have new data sets that weren't previously available to you, and really think about how leveraging cloud computing and the power of cloud computing can help you to analyze that data faster in real time. Thank you, Michelle.
Well said, Peter. I think this is getting really, really intense and very intriguing and very engaging. I'm impressed by the audience that even on social media side, we are getting a few questions coming across. That being said, just keeping to the format, I have an interesting question which has been posed. I like the fact that we've actually went into the whole narrative with respect to red flags, with respect to the identification of exceptions on the premise of logic, and having the ability for AI to a very large extent automate or even consider cognition engineering that logic by itself. So one of the questions which was posed, and it's a good question, I must say, is that can AI-driven systems effectively reduce the incidence of false positives in fraud detection, or does it increment it? And I think that's a pretty interesting question, because as a factor of fraud investigation, so too is there a substantial amount of effort to quantify that this is reasonable and real versus this is just one of the anomalous detections, so false positive. What's your thoughts around that, Peter?
Yeah, so by individualizing the analysis, you're able to remove, quite a large number of the false positives that you're getting. When you're applying one set of rules across, every single customer in your base, like I said earlier, behavior that may be normal for a certain individual is deemed irregular and is flagged and yields a false positive. However, when you're looking at that specific behavior within the context of that one person's historical behavior, the chances of flagging it as let's call it undesirable or irregular behavior comes down drastically, because chances are that person has behaved that way in the past before. So really, practically, you can reduce false positives because the universal rules that you apply, you'll generally relax those a little bit in terms of identifying potential fraud. But before it gets flagged as fraud, that then gets fed through a machine learning model, which will take those results and really whittle them down to say, actually, of those 100 cases that you flagged, these 10 we think are worth investigating.
Brilliant. So we're using logic on the logic. Quite good.
Exactly.
Quite good. And I like the fact that this also would segue into good Edward's discussion around iterative logic and generative IT. So thank you for that answer. And with no further ado, over to you, Edward.
Excellent. Thank you so much. All right. So can everyone see my screen? Very good. All right. I'd like to take a few minutes to talk about generative AI. And specifically the text-based models. And we'll be looking at what it is, what are the limitations of it that you need to be conscious of, and then also some use cases, business-specific use cases. So I'm sure most people have played with ChatGPT. There's a lot of hype around generative AI currently. People are looking at how they can use it within their business. But it's important to first just understand how these models work and what some of the limitations are with them. So generative AI, and specifically the text-based models like those from OpenAI or the Llama models from Meta, they're models that can understand and generate human-like text based off of patterns that they've learned from vast amounts of data. That's mainly internet data. And the integration of these models into platforms like Azure or other cloud platforms makes them more accessible and versatile for various applications, from content creation to potentially fraud detection. So firstly, these models are based on neural networks. So if we look at the GPT models from OpenAI or generative pre-trained transformer models from OpenAI, they're based on neural networks, and specifically a type called transformers. Now, these networks are composed of layers of interconnected nodes that processes information, and you can sort of think of them as neurons. And these models are trained on vast amounts of data, as mentioned, mainly internet data. So, for instance, the GPT-3 and 4 models, which are the OpenAI models, they were trained on diverse internet texts. However, it doesn't know specifics about which documents were in its training set. And then during training, these models learn to recognize patterns in the data. So for these text models, this includes understanding grammar, facts about the world, reasoning abilities, and even some level of common sense. And once these models are trained, the model can generate content. If you've played with ChatGPT, you know that you can give it a prompt. Example, write me a story about something, and the model will produce a coherent continuation based off of patterns that it's learned during training. So even though these models are pre-trained on vast amounts of internet data, you can also do fine-tuning if you've got specific use cases for your business. So it can be fine-tuned on specific data, on your data, to make it a bit more specialized for your use cases. So as an example, if you wanted to respond to emails from your support desk, but you want to have it respond in a specific tone, you can fine-tune it on some example emails so that it's the same tone that a human would send out. And then also probabilistic decision. So the model doesn't produce fixed outputs for a given input. If you ask ChatGPT the same question, you will potentially get a different answer, but the actual content would be the same. So it estimates probabilities for the next word in a sequence, which does make it outputs somewhat unpredictable, and it does allow it to be a bit more creative. But there are a few ways as part of fine-tuning for business scenarios to take a little bit of that creativity away so that you start getting the same type of answers. And then lastly, limitations and ethics. So generative AI, it is powerful, but it's not perfect. Apologies. So it can sometimes produce incorrect or biased information. And we'll have a look in a second at hallucinations. And companies like OpenAI and Microsoft emphasize the ethical use of these models, which ensures that they're used responsibly and with an understanding of their limitations. Right, so hallucination. So this is a term that was popularized by Google AI researchers in 2018. So these generative AI text-based models are very good at creating sort of semantically and syntactically plausible outputs. But if the content is wrong and you're not a specialist on this specific subject, you may think that it is correct. So you need to ensure that you limit hallucinations if you use the models for business-specific scenarios. And there are a few ways around that we'll talk about a bit later. But it's very important to understand this, as this is probably one of the biggest issues that people are having with these large language models. Yeah, so if we look at some of the applications of generative AI, so the first one and probably the most used one currently that we are seeing at our customers is conversational agents. So in the past, chatbots were very intent-based, just trying to understand the intent. If it doesn't, then it can't really assist you. But leveraging things like the OpenAI GPT models as part of a a chatbot makes it a lot more conversational, a lot more human-like. And then also summarization. So summarizing things like customer interactions, summarizing documents and product descriptions. So if you have a fraud team that needs to do investigations, there's multiple customer or multiple cases for a specific customer, you can use the models to summarize that text and just give you a summarized view. Again, working with the AI and not having it do the work for you. As Peter Reed mentioned at the start of the session, you can really fast track and free up your team to focus on bigger things and more important work. From a marketing perspective, you can even use it for product descriptions. If you're launching a new solution into the market, you can give it the specifications of the solution, any documentation you have, and ask it to give you a specific product description that you want to send out. You can also use it for code generation. So you can, with normal language, ask it to write you a specific code requirement, and it can generate the code in your language of choosing. And then also code understanding. So you can give it code, and it can give you a description of what that piece of code does and what will happen if it executes. And then also reason over data. So things like sentiment analysis for customers. You can use it to detect the sentiment in specific cases, or if you've got social media data that you've got access to, you can run sentiment analysis across that, and also transcript analysis on top of that. Right, so just briefly, I've mentioned the Azure OpenAI service previously. So Microsoft have made the GPT models available to Azure customers. So you can create your own instance of the GPT models within your Azure tenant. If you are directly using the OpenAI service, there are data privacy concerns, and also things like Papaya and GDPR if you are working with customer data. So if you have your own tenant, the data stays within your Azure tenant, and you don't have to be concerned about the data privacy or where this data is going to go to. It remains within your Azure tenant. You can create multiple models for different use cases. So you can spin up GPT 3.5 and GPT 4 models, and also some of the embedding models. And it's also scalable and secure, and you can integrate it with your other business applications. Right, so then just lastly, a call to action. So what we've seen is that there's a lot of interest around generative AI, but companies don't always necessarily have a solid use case yet of using it within their business. So what we offer is Inspire and Design Workshop, where we sit with you for X amount of hours, and we'll just train you on the Azure OpenAI service, and then work with you to uncover some use cases specific to your business. And then also just do a very high level design and architecture of what that MVP would look like. Also, if you have a specific use case that you'd like to explore, we do the 10-10-10 approach. Even if you have a use case, your data might not be correct for it. So we'd spend 10 hours with you looking at your use case, your data, then 10 days actually designing it out, and then 10 weeks building out an actual MVP of the solution. Right, and that is it from a generative AI perspective.
Exceptional. Thank you, Edward. I see a combination of hands claps, of thumbs ups, and of other hand signals that we will not mention. But I think all in all, that was exceptional, guys. If you wouldn't mind, guys, given the fact that we have 5 minutes left, we're going to just go directly into a collective questioning and answer base. I think with respect to that, I'm going to backdrop it on my side with the prior view of what is our audience makeup. And unfortunately, it would seem that we do have an artificial intelligence entity within our audience currently. It's just one for now. I'm sure it will grow as time goes on. But that being said, I'm going to move to the next slide. Whilst we are, as a collective presenter audience, presenters answering the questions that I'm going to pose, I'm going to invite the rest of the audience members to please, guys, go back to menti.com, type in that code which you see on the screen. It will come up with a text box. And based on what you feel when you hear the words fraud and AI in the same sentence, give me a word, give us a word, give us an emotion, a feeling that you have in the back of your mind when we are speaking about this. All right, gentlemen, around the table, let's move into a Q&A whilst the backdrop is occurring. I like that the first point that we had was scary, and most certainly would be scary, and that's why the people around the table are here. Okay, first question, gentlemen, and I think, Edward, for the sake of the segue, I'll pose it to you. You did go into a good technical narrative of the strengths of AI. One of the questions which was posed is, what strengths do humans have that AI does not have? And I'm going to suggest keep it as summarized as possible, because we have a collective 8 questions, and I do want to give the benefit of the doubt to the audience from a time gap point of view. These questions will have answers following this session that will be more detailed. Edmund, what's your thoughts? Edward.
So yeah, so that's a very good question. So there's actually a model created called Flare by researchers recently. It's actually used to detect if you're talking to generative AI, things like ChatGPT. And what they found was that there were a few use cases that humans are very good at. Understanding art, AI was still a lot better at understanding it. And in the scenario of Flare for detecting generative AI, if you're, for instance, talking to ChatGPT, things like ASCII art, it is just not very good at understanding. Also, if there's some random inputs in the data, it's not very good at it, where a human can filter all of that out and sort of get to the underlying point a lot quicker. But things like math and summarization, they found that generative AI is a lot better at that.
Exceptional. Thank you, Edward. I will obviously invite the rest of the audience that if they need more information, go ahead and pose the same question to our event organizers, and that will channel back to you. Mr. Reed, here's a good question, and I like the fact that we are answering more than one question in our narrative. How can writers collaborate with artificial intelligence, and yet they still have to depict creativity from their end? What's your thoughts on that, Peter?
So I'd imagine it's similar to other industries. Writers have several things that they go through: creative, construction, storylines, character build, etc. And then they've got the boilerplate. They have to just kind of pump out the text that describes situations, etc. I would imagine that the collaboration works very similar. You ask the AI to build out paragraphs, you ask it to learn your style, you review what it says, you come back. It can save a lot of time. I'm not a creative writer. I'm not a writer that writes novels or anything like that, but I do write a lot of marketing and sales content. And I found that models that can generate that base level content for me, the first 3 pages of a marketing brochure, and then I can go and edit it and change it and work with it. It's definitely a big time saver. And the newer models can actually learn from your style and then implement that on their own. So it can be incredibly helpful. It can be very productive. What you have to do is just limit the creative part, the ideas, the sentiments, the thought to the human, and then work with the prompts with the AI to refine and get it better. So I can't say if someone could write a novel a lot quicker with AI, with generative AI, but I can certainly say for me, things like brochures, decks, etc., it's become a lot quicker. And I still believe it's my content. It took a lot of work to get it the way I want. It's definitely mine, just quicker.
Thank you for that, Peter. Insightful. Most certainly a tool for enablement as opposed to a tool for replacement. Mr. Gartner, a good question posed on your side. Should an organization want to explore AI adaptability, would they need to have all of their data on a cloud platform? Because as you are aware, in the developing world, many small organizations are still to get to cloud and they are on-prem solutions currently. What's your thoughts about that?
So you wouldn't necessarily have to have all your data in on the cloud. I think, if for those applications where the analysis has to be in real time or near real time, then it makes sense to have it on the cloud because you don't want any delays in terms of moving that data from where it's stored to where it's being analyzed. You want that to be quick. So in those kind of real time scenarios, I would encourage clients to move their data into the cloud. In terms of of non-real time applications, maybe you're looking through historical data and trying to find anomalies, things like that. Your data can be on premise, can be on a private network. I think most of the tools that we use to create machine learning models exist on the cloud, but they can feed from on-premise data sources.
Well said, Peter. I think I'm sure some of these questions we could be asking ChatGPT for answers as well, but I would prefer you answering, and that was a great answer. Over to you, Edward. And this would bailiwick into our finalized questions. How would you gather data for machine learning to identify anomalies when you don't have any prior data points that have been identified as anomalies? So this is quite interesting because how would you cause the AI to postulate?
Yeah, so I think that's probably where the human part comes in. You do still need humans to basically train these machine learning models and effectively tell them how they will be working and test these models so that once they're trained, they can quickly detect these anomalies without someone having to actually manually going through. I think as Peter Reed mentioned, the humans can do a lot of this detection, but once you've actually trained the model, it's a lot quicker than a human being. So we definitely still need humans to create these models and train them initially.
Well,
Maybe
that.
just to build on that, Michelle, you where you don't have data, so you've identified a specific anomaly, and now you want to create data to help to train your model. Then its tools, the generative AI, can help you to actually create example data or sample data that you can then use to train your model as well.
Thank you for that, Peter. And I think that's great because remember, the AI model, so far as the cognitive usage of AI is concerned, doesn't necessarily just stop at you have to qualify all data points. It is exploratory in its very nature on the basis of understanding and the ability to cognitively determine anomalies. So long as you frame the prompt anomaly, you are able to traject and triangulate. So well said, gentlemen. We are having a flood of questions. And I will say that given the factor that some of the delegates are actually joining at 12, it's either that we've caused such an amazing sensation that people are joining at the tail end, or we've got some time gap issues. But be that as it may, let's do a quick round robin of one more lot of questions to satisfy the audience, and then we can call it close. If everyone is okay with that, just give me a thumbs up. Great. So, Mr. Peter Reed, on the basis of the round table, it's back to you. And this, I think, it's quite an intriguing one because it moves into a secondary industry, being green energy and the consideration of energy consumption. How has energy consumption been considered with the application of AI in doing so much to improve human labor?
It's a great question. I mean, it's like any industry. It's there are so many different areas that AI can play a role. So the obvious ones to think of things like grid balancing, efficiency, wheeling energy from one place to another. But I'll tell you, in the last year, we've interacted with 3 separate entities that wanted us to help use cameras to look at the grade of coal coming into a power plant and to tell if it's been fraudulent or not. You know, the creativity of the human mind is extraordinary in both good and bad settings. And so I think it's one of those things that can be unlimited. Really flashy examples like wheeling, all the way down to, could I use AI just to extract a proof of delivery slip from a coal delivery and tell if it's fraudulent or not, or tell if it's meeting demand, etc. It's really just about where is a human struggling with a mundane or repetitive process, or can become fatigued, or potentially can be bribed, and where could a human start taking over parts of that role?
Exceptional. Thank you for that answer, Peter. Insightful and indeed agreeable. Before I segue into Mr. Gartner, I'm going to draw some attention to what the screen shares. I see that our top 3 is efficiency, risk, and opportunity, from the basis of us exploring risk-based AI and fraud. I would agree with the risk. Efficiency was all about AI, so that's interesting. An opportunity. Yeah, I see we have a lot of opportunists and entrepreneurs within our audience for sure. All right, Mr. Gartner, in a snapshot in the field of finance, and I'm going to assume that you have some authority with answering the question on the basis of finance. Otherwise, you're welcome to throw it my way as well. In the field of finance, which are the best skills? I mean, this is fine to acquire to get knowledge in AI and machine learning and in automation so far as the financial sector is concerned. Example, data science. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I would encourage you know, most organizations to pursue a data literacy program within their organization. What we've seen, obviously, within virtually every industry, not just finance now, is that more and more all roles within organizations are expected to work with data, to analyze information, to make decisions, to be able to prioritize their own workloads, etc. So everyone is becoming an information worker, and I think while there's a lot of investment going into the tools and the services that are analyzing data, producing data, reporting back on it, not as much investment is going into the people who have to use those tools and services. So I would think getting a baseline data literacy up within your organization should be first priority, and then identifying those individuals who potentially have an interest or have an aptitude to develop a more advanced understanding, and trying to make sure that those people are well spread around the organization. So you have a person from, you know, each area of the business who is thinking about how they can take these, let's call them advanced analytics approaches, and apply them to that area of their business.
Exceptional. No, thank you for that, Peter. I would also venture down the line on the basis that the moment you have determined aptitude, which is a great factor in ensuring that you have the skill set, the foundational skill set, moving on to data science, the nuances of prompt engineering, expanding that in the context of the financial elements and the financial competence of either forensic science in the sense of financial forensic science as it relates back to our topic. Yeah, there's quite a lot to consider around governance, risk control, because the financial sector is quite heavy in that as well. So thank you for that contribution. And let's close off with our final question as it relates to what our chat group has provided us. Given the use of AI in fraud detection and audit, what skills would a human need to stay relevant? I think this also does speak to the prior question, but Edward, I'll allow you to conclude with that answer.
Thanks. So I think the sort of obvious ones are technical skills. So things like data analytics, machine learning and AI basics, understanding of it, and potentially some programming for things like Python and R and SQL for working across data. Also analytical skills. You know, you need critical thinking, risk assessment, but then also soft skills. So things like, you know, we've mentioned the ethics of using and also the what's it called, the biases that are built into machine learning. So ethical judgment, I think is quite important, and then also just the industry knowledge that you already have is invaluable.
Exceptional, exceptional. I see that there are a few questions coming through, but for the sake of this narrative, I am going to draw it to a conclusion. We are 10 minutes in, and I do know that there is quite a lot of commitments around the table. I would urge the audience to please submit your questions over to the event coordinator and organizer, which will then round robin it to the esteemed members that you see around the table, and they will answer in course. I think there might even be a bit more of an interrogative answer, because this will allow us the opportunity to really critically analyze as opposed to a conversational forum. That being said, this conversational forum has achieved its goal in the sense of the narrative. I trust that every one of the audience has taken away some valuable insights and has the ability to understand to a greater extent what we were trying to achieve around marrying the consciousness of fraud to AI, around consideration of risk, and the premise of risk mitigation around what you gentlemen have posed. Thank you so much. This will draw the end to our forum, to our webinar. It has been great. Thank you, audience, for your participation. It has been wonderful. I think I particularly like the interaction that everyone has posed. For some reason, we have over 100 responses, even though we have around about half of that within the view that you have on the screen right now. That being said, exceptional. Thank you. This draws the narrative to a close. All of the best and have a wonderful week, people.
Thank you all.
Excellent.
guys.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much.